This is Big Poppy Racing.
Welcome back to the 2021 Diecast Games. Today's event number 6, the half mile. I sort of call this the mother of all the races. We've got a drop off. It goes into a straight for just over 40 feet. You can see the drop here. And at the end, we've got our timer that will give us to the 1,000th of a second. These are our test cars. We're going to let loose an Audacious, and I think a Nerve Hammer is what that is. Down they'll go. We'll come through and we'll get one set of times. In this case, the Audacious had a 4.389 and a 4.449 for the Nerve Hammer. They will swap lanes for the second run just to make it fair, and here we go. You'll get the times, and then we'll add them total. The Audacious ends up with 8.802. The Nerve Hammer, 8.899. So let's get started. Here's R&R Rhett Racing with his Aston Martin V8 and a Monte Carlo concept. Down they go. There's your first times laid in. Swap lanes and the second time. And the times recorded will show him as the standard and the set. 7.637, not a bad time. Next up, WR Racing, Wobbly Bob. He's got that Ford F-150 and a jackhammer. His first times. Lay it in. Here's the second. We'll take a look at here, and Wobbly Bob has his second times posted, and he's going to split Rhett Racing for second and third at the moment. Next up, here's Just for Luck. There's a Ford Escort and a Mazda Miata. So Just for Luck, out of luck. Escort had a little bit higher than the other. Here's your next, the Lady of Speed. She's got her Chrysler 300 and the trim truck. Down they go. That'll be good enough to hold first and second at the moment. Next up, tie one on Sandy Mack. She's got the Lancer Evo and the Roger Dodger 2.0. So tie one on Sandy Mack, going to be 6th and 7th at the moment. Next up, Mr. Mom Joe. Here's the Matchbox 97 Corvette and the Time Machine. Those are good times. Yep, good enough for first and second at the moment. Here we go, the Button Boys Racing. He's got a 10 Chevy Stalker and a Porsche 928. So the Button Boys will land 10th and 12th at the moment. Next up, the A-Team. The Crazy Canuck, Lamborghini Urus, and a Hyperliner. So the A-Team ends up 11th and 14th at the moment. Next up, G-Mama with G-Buggy Racing. She's got a Jaguar and the Way Too Fast. And the Way Too Fast proves fast enough to be 8th at the moment. Next up, here's Blue Line Racing. He's got that Matchbox Mercedes and the Datsun 280Z. Blue Line making a statement, 1st and 3rd, splitting up Mr. Mom Joe. Next up, Road Rage 2 with a VW Beetle and a Nissan 370Z. Road Rage 2 landing 20th and 21st at the moment. Next, the H-Town Hustlers, the 68 Cougar and the Ferrari F40. H-Town, good enough for 4th and 13th at the moment. Next up, Big Al's Custom Diecast. He's got a Kia Stinger GT and the Rescue Ranger. Big Al placing 15th and 16th at the moment. Next up, Your Nightmare Racing. Got that Matchbox Mercedes and the Carbonite. So Your Nightmare Racing placing 1st and 5th at the moment. Next up, Mrs. BFG, the Ford Fairmont, and the Matchbox Datsun 280Z. So Miss BFG in the top 10 with both the entries. Folks, this is how the cars are stored from event to event. I take them in by team. They're, of course, weighed and examined. And looking at the cars, everybody's cars are laid in color-coded for your color, so they're easier for me to find, especially after 2 or 3 races. And every compartment has foam rubber in the bottom of it to cushion the vehicle, so they're all stored on their hoods, off the wheels, and that's the way we do it here. Next up, Dirty Deeb Racing. He's got the Jaguar and a Way Too Fast. Dirty Deeb, 12th and 15th at the moment. Next up, Po Boy Racing. He's got the Kia Stinger and the Shadow Jet. The Kia Stinger is holding 13th place at the moment. Next up, Down Squad Racing. He's got an 89 Mazda RX-7 and the Speed Trap. '18th and 24th momentarily for Down Squad Racing. Next up, here's NJ Drive Racing. He's got an Aston Martin and the Evo. So NJ holding 23rd and 29th at the moment. Remember the top 32 score. Next up, Hot Car Track, a Jaguar and a Kia Stinger also. Look at here, 9th and 13th at the moment for Hot Car. Next up, Uncle Elvis Racing. He's got a Studebaker pickup and the Governor. The Studebaker, 32nd at the moment. Next up, Mr. BFG, the flat out 442 and a Ferrari F40. Fourth and 17th at the moment, 442 up top. Next up, Arlo Racing. He's got that Crown Victoria and that Matchbox Mercedes. So Arlo's Mercedes good enough for fourth at the moment. Next up, Rusty Rods Racing. He's got that 71 Plymouth GTX and an Aston Martin. Rusty Rod's just out of the points at the moment. Next up, Captain K Racing. He's got a flat out 442 and a Turbulence. His 442 will hold 12th at the moment. Next, here's Big Rami, Dodge Murata and a Ferrari F40. Big Rami good enough to hold 11th and 12th at the moment. Next up, 4114 Racing, 67 Mustang Fastback, 50th anniversary Jet Threat 3.0. So the Mustang lands 16th at the moment. Next up, Booga Basement Customs. He's got the 2010 Ford Mustang and a Datsun 240Z. He's going to be out of the points with his runs. Next up, Gen X Vintage Racing, the AMC Javelin, AMX, and the Horseplay. Gen X 30th and 31st at the moment. Up now, Big Poppy Racing. He's got a flat out 442 and that Toyota AE86. This 442 will place 15th momentarily. Next, Scale Racing Channel, that Murata Stalker and the Solaire CX4. He'll take first at the moment. Next up, JX4 Racing, a 33 Willys, and he has a Solaire CX4. So the Willys, good enough for 30th at the moment. Next up, Lily's Boneyard. She's got a Cadillac Escalade and the Matchbox Mercedes. Lily's lands 18th and 31st at the moment. Next up, Aces High Racing, Jaguar F-Type, and a 98 Subaru Impreza. So Aces High and Spy Dude will be out of the points. Next up, Husky King Racing, Corvette C6R, and a Ferrari 355. Husky King out of the mix. Next up, the Silver Streaks, got a Porsche Carrera and a Kia Stinger GT. No points for the Silver Streak. Next up, MDG, Michael's Diecast Garage, got that Ford GTLM and a Jaguar XJ220. NDG 17th and 26th at the moment. Next up, R&R Racing, Riker, Corvette Stingray and a DeLorean. So Riker will finish out of the points. Next up, Mr. Mom Bubba. He's got a Charger and that Matchbox Mercedes 500. Mr. Mom Bubba, 13th and 20th at the moment. Next up, Metal Mania 3D, Porsche 911, and a Kia Stinger. So Metal Mania out of the points for this event. Next up, Team DRT3K, 70 Chevelle SS and a Mazda Miata. He's out of the points. Next up, Redline Salvage Inc. He's got a Chrysler 300C and carbide. Redline finishes out of the points with his cars. Next, Cut Rot Racing. He's got a Ferrari F40 and a Kia Stinger. Cut Rot below the scoring grid. Next up, Toon Tracks Racing. He's got the Mercedes 500 and a Nissan Skyline. Toon Tracks just below the scoring too. Next, Overclocked Racing with a Shelby GT500 and the Mercedes-Benz G500. Overclocked just out of the points. Next up, DXP Racing, a flat out 442 and the Silver Bullet. DXP breaking in 7th and 19th at the moment. Next, My Hot Wheels Collection, a Ferrari and a Rescue Ranger. His Rescue Ranger is going to place 25th at the moment. Next up, the 7th Infantry Division, a 67 Camaro and the VW Bug. So 7th Infantry will be out of the scoring. Next, the Road Rage Racing. He's got a 16 Bugatti Chiron and a midriff. So he'll land 26 with his midriff. Next up, Irons Diecast Racing. He's got a Corvette Z06 and an AE86 Truno. So Irons Diecast just out of the points. Next up, Rivera Racing. He's got a Datsun 280ZX and the Way Too Fast. Rivera Racing landing 24th and 30th at the moment. Next up, the Troy Racing Team. He's got a Ferrari F40 and a Power Rocket. So Troy Racing out of the points. Next up, League of Speed. He's got a Ford Mustang GT and an Acura HSC Concept. League of Speed's Mustang, holding 15th currently. Next is Rio Rides. He's got a Ford Mustang and a Nissan Skyline. Rio Rides out of the points at the moment. Next up, Pepler Racing. He's got a Toyota AE86 and Unobtainium 1. So Pepler's going to be out of the points. Next up, 734 Outlaws. They've got a Ferrari F40 and a Datsun 300Z. So the Outlaws out of the points. Next up, Red Pill Racing, the Datsun 300ZX and a Carbonite. So Red Pill is going to finish 13th and 26th. Up next, Gut Feeling, a Ford GT40 and a Brit Speed. So Gut Feeling out of the points. Here's Nick Devers Racing with Ferrari F40 and a Datsun 280ZX. Nicky D going to be below the points. Here's our last competitor, the Kaboom Racer with a flat-out 442 and an Evo. So Don will finish below the points also. So here's the final standings for the half mile. First, we'll look at the cars in the top 32 positions that scored points. Now here's the rest of the field from fastest to slowest. Here are the individual car standings after 6 events. And here are the team standings after 6 events. Folks, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe. See you at the next event.
This has been a Big Poppy Racing production.